Well, doing my first video, should have done this many years ago. In case you don't know me, my name's Chris Mastry. I developed a condition called ulcerative colitis. It's an autoimmune deficiency disease, which basically attacks your immune system, right? So has a lot to do with the food you eat, your bowel movements. When I first got colitis, anyways, I'll go kind of into a little bit of the background in the story. When I first got colitis, it's about 2000, 2001. I was pretty young. I was about 22, 23 at the time, somewhere in there, maybe 24-ish. And anyways, long story short, I had no idea what was going on. I was a super athlete. I was literally lived in the gym. I was in phenomenal shape, and my life just kind of took a turn. Went kind of working out of town and with a friend of mine, and we were kind of assigned to this location, not far from where I am, but out of town anyways. Long story short on that, yeah, as I was working out of town, my system started attacking itself, and I didn't know what was going on. And I started having irregular bowel movements. Things got really sloppy, I'll say. For anybody who knows what colitis is, they kind of understand. If you're watching this video, I would assume you've looked it up because you're probably going through something pretty similar to what I went through, or worse, could have been worse. Anyways, back then, there was not a lot of information on ulcerative colitis. And I didn't know what was going on. I was probably a stubborn-headed kid, and I did not really seek help right away. To be honest with you, I just started noticing the symptoms getting worse and worse. Went from everyday solid bowel movements to irregular ones. They started getting softer and softer. They started having blood in my stool, to the point where it was pretty bad, and there was so much blood. I was losing so much blood. I went through a stage where I basically went from about 210 pounds down to about 150 pounds in a little over a month. And it was such a drastic weight loss. I was such a busy young man. I was in school. I was working 20, 30 hours a week. I was on the church choir, several choirs on in my church. I was actively involved in a lot of things. I was studying really hard because I was on pace and wanted to become a teacher. So I was working towards that goal as a career and stuff like that. And basically everything stopped. I didn't know what happened. I just basically, my body just said, Kate, this is what's happening and you need to adapt to it. And basically I was in and out so much. My parents never saw me. I was still living at home at the time. My parents never saw me. One day I was running out the door and my mom saw me, and my shirts were just like draped on me to where I used to fill them out and stuff. They were just draped on me. And I was just like, my mom's like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, at this point, I'd actually already been to the emergency several times. I had gone to a few doctors. Back then, like I said, the information wasn't as there wasn't as much of it as there is now, and it was a lot harder to find. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have a lot of the stuff that you could find now. The internet wasn't how it is now. So, when something happened like that, it was like, okay, well, what's going on? When I went to the doctors, they went from hemorrhoids to, we'll get back to you, to we don't know what's going on. We have to do tests. And I did tests and blood samples and urine samples and stool samples and you name it. I did a bunch of everything. Anyways, long story short, I went through that whole process, but I had dropped down so much in weight that when my mom saw me, she's like, oh my God, what's going on with you? And we have a relative who's a nurse, one of the local hospitals. Anyway, she asked her if there's any doctors I could go see. And I'm like, Mom, I've already seen doctors. They're not helping me. And I was kind of my world was just crumbling. I basically felt like where I could accomplish anything in life and I could do anything in life, my world just became very small very quickly. My priorities changed. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Well, I didn't know if I was going to live, to be honest with you. And it was a kind of a scary feeling back then, but I figured I'd start my first video, tell you a little bit about who I am, where I came from with colitis and ulcerative colitis. Long story short, my mom found me a doctor. I was in to see that doctor within a couple of days. Then telling him the same thing I told every doctor, because I mean, I was bleeding so much, I felt like I'd swallowed razor blades. But I told him the same thing I told every doctor, you know, bowel movements are regular, lots of blood, a little bit of cramping, no real pain, but I had cramping. And I wasn't eating because, you know what I mean? I was literally in the bathroom like 30, 40 times a day. It seemed like every half hour. Couldn't get a decent night's sleep. Literally waking up every 30, 40 minutes in the middle of the night just to go to the bathroom just to let out some blood. And it was that bad. So I literally stopped eating for pretty much a month. So I dropped the weight really quickly. But yet I continued to go to school. I continued to work. Like I said, a stubborn young man, right? But I just figured, hey, you know what? I'm either gonna, I figured I could do this and still figure it out. But that wasn't the case. But luckily, God was on my side. Mom found me a doctor. Literally within a couple of days seeing that doctor, he got me in to see a specialist within a couple of days. Normally like 6 to 8 weeks wait to see a specialist. I saw them within a couple of days. By mid next week, they did a scope. So within 2 weeks, I basically knew what was going on. She said to me, you know, fast, blah, blah, blah. I, did the fast and they put me under, did a bit of a scope on my colon, figured out I had ulcerative colitis. And as a student and only working semi-part-time, trying to make ends meet and stuff like that, even though I'm living at home, so not really make ends meet, but I basically, she looked at me and it's like, well, do you have insurance? This medication's expensive. And I was like, oh, I don't. I was off my parents' insurance at that point because I was a little older. And she's like, oh, okay. She looked at me because when I first walked into her office, her jaw dropped. She's like, oh my God, you need help now, right? My wife's a nurse now, and she's like, well, why didn't they put you on fluids and all these other things and admit you to the hospital? Because that's what they do now. But I'm like, well, back then they didn't do that. And, I was an active young kid and I just kept going, right? But to get to the point where I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. I would read something at school and I couldn't even remember the sentence I just read. Like my body was falling apart and my mind was falling apart and I didn't know what was going on. Anyways, long story short, she opens up the drawer or the desk and hands me 6 months free medication. She's like, here, but I would recommend you get some insurance, blah, blah, blah. Gave me that whole spiel. Started going on the meds. She prescribed a few other things, some steroids, and I was on something called Celifulk. Anyways, long story short, healed up probably about 6 months later. It was pretty good at that point. And, I was apparently supposed to keep taking the meds and she was an amazing doctor. Actually, I miss her because she retired on me. But yeah, basically I stayed on those meds, got back to health, started getting back in shape. It was probably after about the 6 months, it was probably about a year after by the time I felt like I was in phenomenal shape again and stuff like that because I started going back to the gym. They told me not to right away, obviously, right? Because I got to heal my body. But, I went through all sorts of even though they were just part-time jobs, I lost a lot of jobs because, I remember back then, we caught the bus. I literally couldn't walk out the door without having to run back in to go to the bathroom because I'd soil myself if I didn't. And it was such an embarrassing thing, right? And I remember my boss getting mad at me one day. He was like, why are you always late? You never used to be late. Why are you late all of a sudden? I'm like, honestly, I have this condition. And he didn't know anything about it all. He thought I was just playing him. And I just told him, listen, it's legitimate. I'm sick. I don't know what's going on. I'm at work. I'm running to the bathroom every 20, 30 minutes, right? School, I was late for school. I was missing classes. I'd get to class. I'd have to run out of class. It was brutal. And it was a hard time because I had no idea what was going on. anyways, the video is going to be forever if I don't cut it off sooner or later here. But that's a little bit about me when I first got colitis. Now, I had many flare-ups over the years. I didn't take the medications as I was supposed to, because I would stop taking them. Apparently, we weren't supposed to stop taking them, but I'd stop taking them, and then I'd get a bit of a flare-up, and I'd start taking it again. And, you know, if the flare-up got really bad, they'd put me back on the steroids, and the steroids are really bad for your body, you know. You know, they just do a lot of bad things for you. I mean, they help heal you, but a lot of side effects and stuff like that. Anyways, many years later, you know, this is like over 20 years ago now. I'm 44, so a little over 20 years ago, and I basically had gone through many flare-ups, lost a lot of jobs, finally got into a really good job. You know, a bunch of things happened, you know. It was, like I said, it just flare-up after flare-up. It seemed like with maybe about every 12 to 24 months, I'd get a flare-up, right? Deal with it for 2 or 3 months, get back to normal, carry on with my life. You know, even though I may lose a job, and it just seems like I've never been able to get back on top because of some of that kind of stuff. And I've never actually told the whole story, so it's kind of interesting me telling the story. Sorry, guys, but everyone, I am a little bit, you know, taken back sometimes when I listen to myself tell it, because I'm like, I forgot all that stuff happened to me. Long story short, I had a flare-up probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was so bad. I literally missed 6 months of work in a year. I had a new doctor because my old doctor retired at that time. Like I said, I missed her. The new one just didn't understand me. I definitely didn't have the same bedside manner. And I had no idea what was going on. I remember going into her office a few times, and she's like, well, you taking the meds? I'm taking the meds. And she's like, are you doing this? And the steroids started happening. I think I was on the 3rd or 4th dose of steroids, which I wasn't supposed to be on. I think they were either 6 or 8 week doses. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this isn't working. I was just losing weight. I was getting sicker. They tried a bunch of other things, other meds on me. And some of them made me feel really weird. Some of them I was barfing all the time. Some of them I couldn't even stand up. I got dizzy all the time. So some of the side effects were just insane. Anyways, long story short, I was at home for 6 months. First 3 months, I probably did not do a whole lot about it. Just kind of, well, this is my life. What am I supposed to do? Felt sorry for myself. And maybe something people don't talk a lot about when they talk about some of these illnesses. It doesn't matter which illness, actually. I'll guarantee you, almost anybody who's ever dealt with an illness, you know, you have all these dreams and goals for your life, and then all of a sudden it's taken away because your body can't handle it, and you get stopped right in your tracks. So I went through a lot of depression. And with depression is stress. And when I was younger, I definitely didn't deal with stress very well. When something didn't go my way, I stressed and I held it, and I was like, oh, I got so angry. And as I got older, I learned to deal with stress, and you know, as different people came in and out of my life and stuff like that, I learned dealing with different stress techniques, and meditating, and you know, just calming my mind, realizing that there's certain things I can't control, but I can only control the things I can control. So I would stop. Well, I can't control what that person does, so whatever happens, right? And I just deal with it. Well, I can't control what happens at work, so I just deal with it. If I lose my job, oh well, okay, I just move on. Something else will come my way. And I just learned to adapt that way, because if I didn't and I carried that stress, my body gets so stressed, the colitis would just get 10 times worse. And it would almost just ravage my body. So I learned to deal with stress just a little bit differently. Anyways, I decided to do the video today because I know there's a lot of people out there that are probably going through either IBS, colitis, Crohn's. There's different variations, different, you know, degrees of these sicknesses. I'd like to think that mine's fairly mild, although it does act up fairly severely sometimes. Although, you know what, as I was telling you part of that story and I never finished it, as I was sick for 6 months, probably the second half of that 6 months, is I kind of just wallowed in my self-pity and depression and stress and all that kind of stuff. Luckily, my boss, who was, like I said, thank God for him, he was super kind to me. He actually paid me without telling anybody at the office that I was sick. I just was gone for 3 months, basically. Paid me under the table my full salary. Well, I came back for maybe a month actually, thinking, well, I can't ride this out forever, right? Came back, couldn't hack it. He sent me home again. When I went back home, the second time I actually had to go on short-term disability, which is, about 66% of your salary. So that added a little bit of stress. But during that second stint at home, I basically decided, okay, somebody else has this condition. Somebody else has gone through something similar. There's billions of people in the world. I can't be the only one. So I decided to start doing some research. I started watching videos. YouTube's a little bit more prominent because it's like, 5 or 6 years ago. So I started watching videos. I watched documentaries. I read a ton of stuff online, and I started finding different things that would help me. And I spent a lot of money on different dietary things, and some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. I found certain things cooled it down. Started realizing that it did have a lot to do with my diet. And you'd think as an athlete, I would have learned some of that stuff when I was younger. Well, we're kind of stubborn. I like to eat certain foods. Who doesn't, right? There are certain things I just couldn't stay away from. I have a chocolate addiction. Who doesn't, right? Some of us don't, but some of us just have certain cravings and stuff like that. But I've always been a little bit more addictive to certain things. So that's one of my kryptonites is chocolate, let's just say. Anyways, long story short, I kind of just went through that whole process, and man, I tried everything. Finally, something started to work. I started getting better. I started gaining weight, started healing. There was less blood in my stool. I started using different things. I started using ginger as I realized it was an anti-inflammatory property. Same as, what's the other one there? Not curry, turmeric. And, I started using things like l-glutamine, right? Which is a tissue healer, right? It's basically what it is. A lot of athletes use it because it helps you to rebuild your tissues faster, right? So when you start working out, you start tearing your tissues. So it helps you, right? A lot of other properties to some of these things, but I started using a lot of those things. I started doing a shake every morning, right? So first I started using dairy. I realized dairy wasn't the best thing, so I started using almond milk or coconut milk, and started doing that. So I'd put ginger, coconut milk, berries, bananas. I like cocoa, so I'd add cocoa, some protein powder. Realize that there's some really good, not necessarily like the soy proteins and stuff like that, but maybe a lot more of the natural ones. So started using some of those. I started just putting, vitamin D I found out is really good, and aloe vera. So I started actually juicing too. So this is when I learned how to juice. So I bought a Breville juicer, and as we go through some of the videos, I'll kind of go through some of the different things I did, and and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, but I won't go through all that today. But anyways, long story short, I started juicing. So juicing things like celery, carrots, apples, ginger, beets, because it has lots of iron in it, kale, cucumbers, like you name it, just a variety of different things. Sometimes I would do fruit juices, and you know what I mean? So because the thing I found about juice is, and I think at the time it was like a 12-day juice fast. So I did nothing but juice. So I'll tell you that if you ever decide to juice and go on a fast, it was a great reset for my body. I stopped craving all the garbage that's out in society. Didn't want to eat junk food, didn't want to eat like takeout food. Home cooked food was the best. I found a little bit more of a vegan diet, although I still liked salmon, and I still like chicken and stuff like that. I still like my steak once in a while too, but I didn't really have a taste for anything that was in a bottle, jar, can, bag, anything like that. Anything processed I didn't really care for. It just had an off taste to me, so started craving more natural things. But 12-day juice fast, it was hard. The first 3 days was hell on earth. I kid you not. I was, if you've ever done any fasting before, it's hell on earth. I was miserable. My body was going through a detox. I didn't know where I was going with anything. It was horrible. I didn't know if I could do it, but I kept doing it anyways. I watched that Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. I thank God for that, because it was something that, he went through something. It's an autoimmune disease that he had gone through, except it was more with his skin, I believe. And, for me, it was internal. So I figured, what, why not juice? Why not use the natural things of the earth that God put on the earth? And I just decided to do that. And 12 days I juiced. And, the doctor was getting a little concerned because, it was 12 days, no actual solid foods at all, zero. And they're getting a little concerned because they're like, well, you need to start eating something. So I started eating, like steamed vegetables and stuff like that, because hard vegetables are hard for you. So I started eating steamed vegetables, broccolis and stuff like that. If I was going to eat a cucumber, I wouldn't eat the skin part. I would just dig out the middle because it's softer. But I would eat, basically if I was cooking chicken, it'd be like just a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, with maybe some coconut oil or some avocado oil, in a salad, basically, you know what I mean? And if I was putting dressing on my salad, it wasn't dressing from the store, it was lemon and maybe some olive oil or something like that, right? A little bit of that. So I was doing stuff like that. I was trying to keep my diet as plain and simple as possible. Anyways, long story short, I started getting better. I started feeling better. I started doing great. My mind cleared up. I wasn't as stressed about things. I felt like I could think more clearly. I was way more creative. I had a lot more energy. You'd think after 12 days of fasting, I would just be like, ugh, but I was like upbeat. I was energetic. I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like I had energy and I felt strong, even though I was like probably down to 160 pounds at that point. But I felt a lot better. Anyways, that's a whole nother story, but I started getting better, and it was great because I started feeling like I was in control of my life again, a little bit anyways, right? As much control as we have, but started feeling like I was in control of my life. And I just went after it. And you know what? It kind of brought me back a renewed sense of purpose in life, because I was like, you know what? I need to do this and get better so I can, provide for my family and do all these things. And anyways, I did all that, got better. It's like I said, it's been about 5 or 6 years, close to 6 years now, I think. And you know what? I'm kind of just started going through a flare-up. And why am I going through a flare-up? Well, kind of dropped some of the practices I have for the last little while. And you get comfortable in life. And I got a little bit comfortable and started eating a bunch of junk and a bunch of junk food. And, if it was a weekend, well, a little chocolate bar and a bag of chips or whatever, right? I started drinking a little bit more pop than I normally do. And I literally cut out pop and all that kind of stuff for the longest time, but I just got really comfortable in life, But life also gets stressful. There's a lot going on, running a small business and working and with having a family and all of the things that come with all of that. And many of you that know that, it's, if you're just starting out and you're younger, you don't have all those stresses and pressures in life, but you got to pay the bills and all these other things. So I realized there's a lot going on, and I have not really been practicing my stress techniques and stuff like that. And a lot of times it's not that I was practicing a lot back then, but I would go through, even a couple minutes of meditation in the morning or at some point during the day, or, I would just kind of just stop myself and just be like, slow down, Chris. There's nothing you can do about it. Just be calm and just de-stress. And I do some breathing exercises, in, out, in, out. I do that 5 or 10 times and just slow myself down and be like, okay, what can I control in this situation? What can't I control in this situation? What can I do differently? How can I think about it? How can I react? Those type of things. I'd ask myself those questions, and I just started doing that kind of stuff, and I was able to control it. But now I'm starting to go through a little bit of a flare-up. It just started happening over the last week or two here. And I'm like, oh, why? And I'm like, oh, well, that would be why, the diet, the stress, and all these other kind of things. And because I said 5 or 6 years, you almost feel like it's never coming back, right? And I really felt that way. So, I thought I'd do a quick video. This will be the first of many, because I figured, there's a lot of people that need the help. I was searching YouTube over the last couple of weeks here because I knew my body was stressing and I could feel things changing. My bowel movements definitely have changed a lot, to the point where there's blood in my stool again. And I figured, there's a lot of what seem like professionals out there, and rightfully so. I am not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I did not go to school for any of this kind of stuff. So make sure if you are going through any of this kind of stuff, you do consult your physician. Take their advice. Obviously, if there's anything you can do, we are in control of our own lives. So if there's anything you can do, you can control what you put in your body. You can control what you think. You can control how you feel about it, right? So me sitting there and wallowing in my own self-pity and stressed and depressed and all these other things is not going to help my situation. I'm kind of one of those type of people. I'm entrepreneurial minded. I always want to succeed. I want to push. I want to be successful in whatever I'm doing. So I always have this drive to be better than I am. And if I'm not doing well, I'm like, well, why am I not doing well? So I'm sitting here saying, well, why am I not doing well? I need to change some stuff. So I'm right back to it again. I'm going to start getting back on the diet, started cooking a little cleaner, making my own homemade salad dressings and stuff like that. And I'll start going through some recipes and things that I do a little bit in the next few videos. And, I'll show you in the kitchen and stuff like that. And some of the research I did, it's funny because I was thinking about it because it was so long ago I did a lot of this research. I thought to myself, I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I can't even remember everything I did. Slowly starting to come back to me, some of the things I did, but I'm like, wow, I really need to get back on this because I've kind of really fallen off the wagon. And, something I always said, I always wanted to be healthy in life. When I was young, I always said, I'm going to be super successful. I want to be a teacher. So success to me mean being a teacher, married, kids, family, living the life, traveling, vacations, and doing all those kind of things, and just living a great life. Now it's just, living a great life like that, but healthy, so I had to add that to my, and healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, in every way, shape, or form. And that's how I kind of want to live my life. So hopefully you guys are getting something out of this. Like I said, I'm going to post a bunch of videos. Not sure where it's all going to go, but I know there's other people out there who need help. And honestly, I wish I would have had this help many, many years ago. I think it would have changed my life. It would have definitely changed my life. I might have actually finished school because I actually dropped out of school, never went back, went into the trades, never really found, what I really wanted to do. So it really did change my life, and I've kind of just felt like I've never been on the path I wanted to be on, but maybe I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on. So doing a video like this, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be right now. So hopefully you guys, like I said, get something out of this. I really love helping people. I hope you guys get that sense. And, if there's any questions you guys have, please feel free to ask, because I'm going to kind of relearn a lot of this stuff. Going to start doing some research again and, putting some extra time into this, because like I said, if you don't take care of it, it can really ruin your life and control your life. And you don't want that. There's something that you need to do, and we all are in control of our own lives. And, if you need to change your diet, if you need to change your attitude, it's up to you. And many of us don't realize that until you get sick, right? And they say, most people, in insurance and stuff like that, it's not about whether or not you're going to die. It's whether or not you're going to develop a critical illness at some point in your life. And a lot of people do, they say one in 3 people, or whatever the stats are now, and they're always changing, but, are going to develop some sort of critical illness at some point in their life. So you know what, I'm lucky enough to be one of those type of people, but hopefully we can use that for good and somebody can get something out of this. So if you are down, depressed, you're watching this video, you don't know what's going on with your life, you feel like you may have something, go get yourself checked out. If it is colitis, there's lots of help out there for you now. Hopefully I can, be somebody that you can look to and say, hey, you know what, he overcame it. Because that's what I was looking for. Somebody overcame it. Somebody did something that changed the way, modern medicine looks at it. And they're succeeding. They're living a great life. They've adapted. And you know what? So I can't eat a chocolate bar anymore, or I can't eat chips. If I do it, you just have to learn how to do it in moderation. You know what? I can't remember the last time even when I do drink pop, I drank a full pop. Most of the time I drink like a half a can, and it'll be at a party or birthday party or something like that. So I don't even drink a lot of pop. I never drank a lot of alcohol, so alcohol was never an issue for me. But if you are drinking alcohol and you have, IBS, colitis, or Crohn's or anything like that, definitely not a good thing for you. So, like I said, if what I'm saying to you, or, it's resonating with you and you feel like, you could learn something from this, hopefully we can learn it together and we can improve our lives together. Hopefully you guys have a great week and you'll be seeing more from me. Thanks again. My name's Chris. Any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where we're going to be talking about different things, including things like Crohn's, colitis, IBS, some of the different topics we're going to be covering, gut health, diet, stress, doctors, medication, depression, and a bunch of other different things. Wanted to do this because we wanted to get involved in the community. There's all sorts of people out there suffering with their guts and not sure what to do with their gut health. Let's see if we can get out there and help a bunch of people. If you know of any ways where you can get in there, answer some questions, maybe help somebody so they don't have to go through everything you went through, because I know a lot of us have gone through a lot of things. Let's get out there and respond to a bunch of different people. Maybe we can help somebody in the process not go through some of the craziness that we've gone through. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. I'll make sure I answer everything to the best of my ability. And let's get out there and help a bunch of people with their guts.